Welcome to a brief overview of Symphony. In this video we will discuss what Symphony is, what it provides, and take a first-hand look at some things available in a running instance. Symphony deploys a fully accredited analytic environment into a vendor-agnostic cloud for machine learning, artificial intelligence, and big data analytics capabilities. As of the making of this video, Symphony will deploy into AWS, vSphere, and Microsoft Azure, with more to come in the future. Accreditation of systems is a requirement in most government spaces, but it has many problems that haven't been addressed. The traditional process is a very timely endeavor, usually requiring several months and many iterations. Larger projects especially feel this pain. Accreditation on a per-server basis is cumbersome. Anyone in charge of a system containing 50+ nodes would be able to attest to how much of a burden getting each of these hosts compliant is, let alone keeping them compliant while still meeting operational needs. The addition of new software requires adjustments to each machine it's going to be installed on. This is a lot of paperwork to keep up to date for your security team, and a lot of overhead work for the admins to identify each host that will need the new software, or the ones that have already had it installed. Creating and managing network rules to enforce separation of duties is overly complex and prone to human error. There are entire teams dedicated to performing this function, and oftentimes a simple mistake could have a very negative impact on the accessibility of your systems or the communication between the internal components. Though security is usually at the forefront of most admins' minds when they build a new system, building in a mechanism for their security team to perform security scans tends not to be. This could be very frustrating to the admin that now has to set up this capability, and to the security team that now can't perform their job function in a timely manner. Symphony addresses and corrects all of these issues. From the time a Symphony cloud environment is deployed, the requirements of FISMA moderate and FedRAMP aligned security controls will already be in place. Symphony reduces the time it takes to have a fully operational, accredited system with authority to operate from months to hours. Symphony implements the accreditation of an entire cloud environment, which means that the system as a whole is accredited, not just the individual pieces that make it up. This greatly simplifies the accreditation process for everyone involved. One of the benefits of your entire environment being accredited is that any new software that needs to be implemented within the environment need only be approved for the system as a whole, eliminating the need to micromanage which host has which piece of software installed. The cloud environment is deployed with zones that already have network rules in place to govern traffic in and out of each zone. Symphony takes advantage of the built-in capabilities of cloud technologies to logically separate hosts with specific functions and govern communication between these zones. This means that configuration of your network infrastructure is ready to go out of the box. Symphony keeps the need to perform security scans in mind by creating a dedicated zone for security personnel to schedule and review security scans. We'll now dig a little deeper into the steps involved in the traditional ATO process. The system will have to start with being designed by the engineers and the architects. After the system has been designed, the system administrators are tasked with building and configuring the system. That can mean either purchasing hardware or setting up a virtual environment. Once the system has been built, security engineers apply security scripts to the system in preparation for ATO scans. After several months of back and forth and many iterations, the system finally reaches ATO, but it doesn't end there. The SSP documentation needs to be kept up to date with any changes that occur to the system after ATO has been reached. This includes any new software installed on any of the machines, or any new hosts added to the system. Security personnel then scan the system and report any findings on each individual host. And this process continues for several months before a new audit is performed to keep ATO status. Symphony vastly improves and simplifies this process. The engineers start by using Symphony's automated deployment process and documentation to build a system that has already been through the ATO process. Beyond the core Symphony deployments are product packs like analytics and data flow that can be added to your Symphony deployment seamlessly without affecting your ATO status. This process allows Symphony to build repeatable ATO'd system combinations. And Symphony does this in a matter of hours, not days, weeks, or months. What's the bottom line? It takes months for a system using the traditional process to get it accredited and given ATO. With Symphony, you could have a fully accredited, fully functional system with ATO in a matter of hours. Now we're going to take a look at a live Symphony instance in Azure to see some of the things you'll get out of the box. Let's start by taking a look at how simple it is to kick off a Symphony deployment. One simply has to run our kickstart script and you're off and running. The kickstart script creates a deployment box that kicks off the creation of your entire cluster within your specified cloud platform. This process, however, takes hours to run through to completion, so we're going to look at a system that's already gone through all of this. Here we see the VMs that make up our Symphony instance. All of these will be created and configured by going through the kickstart script. You'll notice a checkbox next to our Bastion VM. Upon completion of the cluster configuration, the only way into our system will be through the Bastion host. All of the other machines only have private IP addresses and can only talk to other VMs within this Symphony deployment, and that's only if the network security groups allow them to communicate between each other. We're now going to log into our desktop environment of our Bootstrap host by creating an SSH tunnel through our Bastion server. From here, we'll look at a few features available from our deployment. Whenever a user logs into any desktop environment within Symphony, they'll be greeted with the Symphony help page. From here, they'll be able to access all of the tools within their deployment. We're going to start by looking at our logging capabilities. All of our host system logs are being shipped to our elk stack, and from our Kibana interface we'll be able to filter and search any log entry being sent in. For instance, we can search for info, and it will return all the results that contain the word info. Now let's move on and take a quick look at our analytics cluster health through Ambari. We can see that our cluster is healthy and ready to process some data. Each service running within the Hadoop cluster is listed and easily accessible. If there were any alerts that needed our attention, they would be easily viewable next to the service that was throwing the alert. Let's open up FreeIPA. Here we configure all of our users, groups, hosts, and rules that govern which users are allowed to access each host. Out of the box, there are several groups already pre-configured with access rules to specific groups of hosts. Let's add a new user named John Doe. We'll give him an initial password which he'll need to change on his first login. We'll also need to give our new user an SSH key. FreeIPA requires both the use of an SSH key and a password to be able to get into the system. We'll also need to add our new user into a group. If he's not part of a group that can access the Bastion server, he's not going to be able to access anything. Since he's a developer, we'll add him to the dev group. Before John is able to log into the desktop of his workstation, he'll need to complete an initial login to the Bastion server to change the default password our admin gave him upon creation of his account. We see the Bastion server took his key but still requires his password. We're going to go ahead and change his password so that he can log into his workstation and start being productive. Equipped with his new password, John should be able to log into his desktop environment and access the tools available to all the other developers working in this deployment of Symphony. Now let's log into his workstation and see a few of the tools he'll be able to access. Upon initial login, he's greeted with the Symphony help page, but we're more interested in a couple of the tools installed locally on the machine. Every developer will want an IDE to develop in. Here we will use Eclipse as an example. Implementing a different IDE would be as simple as getting a new piece of software approved for the system as a whole, and then the admins can install the new piece of software on any user workstation within the environment that requires it. They'll be able to do this without having to report back an extensive list of software installed on each individual workstation. We'll let Eclipse load up and then move on to our next piece of software. Most users will want access to an Office suite. Here we're using OpenOffice as an example. Again, if there's a requirement or a need for a different Office suite, making the change would be as simple as getting approval for the entire cloud environment. John's a developer, which means he's most likely on a team of developers working on a common code baseline. That means that John will need access to the team's GitLab, which is available with Symphony out of the box. All John needs to do is log in, and he's ready to pick up an existing project or start a new one. John also has access to the internet, even though we can't get directly to his machine from the outside world. However, there are some projects that would prefer this not be the case. With that in mind, it is configurable whether the workstations have internet access or not. Let's switch gears and put ourselves in the shoes of one of our security officers. We're going to log into the CaaS host, which contains all of the tools the security team needs to perform compliance scans. There's our trusty Symphony help page, but we're more interested in the compliance tools. We're going to start with StackStorm. Here we see a list of activities that we can run. The CaaS scan will begin a complete compliance scan of the system using OpenVAS. A ticket will also get created in Jira when this happens. From the ticket, we can check the status of the scan or view the results of the scan. Viewing the results of the scan will bring you to the Greenbone Security Assistant. From here you can manually check the results of the scan, or you can kick off a scan on a specific hostname or IP address. This now concludes our feature demo. Let's go over the layout of a Symphony cell. Here we see a diagram of our cloud environment. Within each Symphony cell there are multiple zones. Each zone represents its own subnet. Out of the box, the networking rules that govern the way the zones are allowed to communicate with each other will be in place. The only way into our environment from the outside world will be through the Bastion host. An authorized external user will have to SSH into the Bastion server before they gain access to all of the tools available within the environment. All of this means you will have a secure infrastructure from the moment your Symphony cell is spun up. What can Symphony do for your organization? It can automatically deploy a secure compliance system in a matter of hours or days instead of taking weeks or months. It will simplify your accreditation process by allowing you to accredit an entire system instead of individual pieces that make up the system. It will simplify the addition of new software and virtual resources because once something is approved for a system, it can be used freely within that system. It will simplify your network management and security by setting up the appropriate security rules for your network zones out of the box. It will simplify the process of staying compliant and verifying the state of your compliance by creating an entire zone dedicated to compliance scanning. It will simplify the user and group management by leveraging FreeIPA to create several pre-configured groups that already allow access to specific groups of hosts. Symphony, where accreditation meets automation. Thanks for listening.